from the last fight. But he's clearly going to be able to survive against several of the other contenders. And so, if there was somebody out there who could just get him into a bit of strength and conditioning, a live-in dietitian, he'd make millions and millions and millions.
Yeah, being the kind of defined number 4 wouldn't be a bad place to be in heavyweight boxing right now. At the same time, though, you look at Saturday night's fight and I guess the poor fare that some might have thought it was. It might have been one for the purists. We got Andy Lee's taking it a little bit later on. But I wonder, did we get overexcited about this heavyweight division? Like, granted, I know Wilder Fury was a great fight.
No, I don't think so. I think that any time Anthony Joshua fights, there's going to be chances for his opponent, and it's going to be exciting. Like the Klitschko-Joshua fight was brilliant. It had like 3 of the best rounds in a row that you're ever going to see in boxing.
I'm talking about like a quality, like all-time great boxer here.
Who knows?
I think we rushed to put him, once we had a great heavyweight bracket, or so we seemed.
Yeah, so that's a completely different thing, right?
We rushed to kind of push him into the golden age of boxing standards.
It's just way better than it was when it was just Klitschko beating everybody in a boring way.
It's certainly better than that.
And that's all you want, right? All you want is good competition. I don't know if they're the greatest boxers of all time. I think it's safe to say that Anthony Joshua, when it comes down to it, is not going to be considered one of the top 5 heavyweights of all time. Like, it doesn't look like it. He doesn't seem to have the ring craft. He doesn't seem to have any of the boxing nous that you would associate with the top 5 heavyweights of all time. But I don't know. I mean, maybe if he cleans this up now and comes back from this and gets better as time goes on, suddenly everybody's going to go, hang on, we need to reevaluate that. But he can, like, he says he was sick now. That's the excuse for the loss to Ruiz. So it'll be interesting if that never happens again. Because what happened, exactly the same thing. It looked like all of the money finally began to take its toll. And I don't think he was that impressive the other night. It was like, Eric Donovan was on Twitter saying it was a ridiculous kind of scared fight from Joshua. And look, maybe that's exactly what they needed to do, or they felt tactically they needed to do, because he's walking into punches and he was getting hit with them.
I'd be interested to kind of like hear some sort of analysis on how his stock has fallen in, say, the United States at the moment, Anthony Joshua, because it seemed like that there was some sort of ratcheting up of his profile over there before he ever stepped into a ring with Fury or with Wilder, and we thought those fights were going to happen, and then the Ruiz shock happens, and obviously that kind of creates some sort of dramatic nature to your character, because look at the hero, he's been felled, and then at the weekend, that sort of performance where he doesn't get a knockout, I wonder if people stateside are just kind of getting to a state of apathy around him.
All right, so we had no audio on our video for about the first 10 minutes of the show this morning. That's all fixed now, so you can get your YouTube fix, youtube.com/offtheball, or of course you can also get us on Facebook. Best place to watch us every morning is on offtheball.com. Here's what's coming up: sports pages, which we're going to do very quickly. Fergus O'Dowd, we're going to talk to in 3 minutes. We're going to go to Mayo and find out about the fact that Kieran McDonald is back with Nathan Murphy. Football with Kenny coming your way at 8 o'clock. It's Kenny Cunningham's thoughts on the end of the league title. Surely Kenny's going to admit that it's over now. Daniel Harris on the rebirth of Manchester United. Tipperary against Dublin at 8:30. That's Tipperary stopping the 5 in a row against the Dubs, and that is the throwing of the GPS at Dean Rock. Champions Cup your way at 8:40 with Alan Quinlan. Andy Lee in studio around about 9:05 to talk to us about Joshua. Time for the papers though.
OTB AM.
We're just going to do these really quickly and get into the big news of the week, which is obviously with Fergus O'Dowd. Hoopy Christmas is the back page headline on the Star. Celtic 1, Rangers 0. Celtic rode their luck yesterday. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals, is the banner in the stand from the Celtic fans over the shoulder. FAI's emergency meeting. The FAI Minister for Sport, Shane Ross, and Sport Ireland have been asked to attend an emergency meeting of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Wednesday. We'll speak with Fergus O'Dowd about that in a minute.
Back page of the London Times is Contrite City console Fred over racism. Arrested man 41 denies abusing United player. But it is Anthony Joshua there pictured on the back page of the newspaper alongside a headline saying, I had a health issue in the first Ruiz fight.
Lisbon Lions, great weekend for Ireland at the cross-country Cotter and G'day medal on historic day for Irish athletics. Donald Lennon and Munster undone by an over-eagerness to execute more expansive game plan. They did win at the weekend, didn't they?
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Ireland jump for joy in Lisbon, and foxing clever. Leicester focused as they thump Villa.
Forced class is the Back page headline on The Sun, that's that same story. Hero Fraser, I owed Gaffer those saves. And Oireachtas invite is the headline on their Fergus Adad story.
Jamie Vardy on the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section. Can you hear us? Rampant Vardy helps Leicester record breakers hammer out title warning.
Back page of the Indo this morning. Rodgers leads the fox hunt. It is Brendan Rodgers and Jamie Vardy. They were brilliant yesterday, obviously. Joy for present and hope for the future. McCormick leads charge on a heroic day for Ireland in cross country. Ballyboden shown nerve and patience to seal late glory in Leinster. Interesting too that on Friday Michael Darmacawley was able to go on the Late Late Show and play really well on Sunday. Hopefully this is the start of a new open era where people aren't scared to say things.
He didn't even start yesterday, Ger. That's how badly his performance was affected. I changed the game when he came on. Back page of The Guardian is London calling. Joshua wants Spurs fight after revealing health concerns. And Flying Foxes, Vardy continues his hot streak as Leicester underline their title credentials with Fab Four at Villa and cut Liverpool's lead at the top to 8 points.
Dick Clerkin's comment, GAA's stoic democracy will at least save it from fate now befalling the FAI. And then the front page headline on the Examiner is Páirc Uí Chaoimh debt, stadium debt will be 30 million, claims delegate. So I just wouldn't be taking any victory laps at the moment if I'm involved in a sports organisation.
Just be thankful it isn't you, really, is kind of where the happiness should begin and end, I think. Back page of the Mirror is Watch Out Klopp. Evans roars, we're contenders as Foxes win 8th straight game, while Rodgers insists his firepower can hurt anyone.
Yeah, Tracy Kennedy, the Cork County Board chairman, I think, his chair has said that in recent weeks, chairperson obviously, Tracy Kennedy revealed that the board's money woes on top of the demands for a new posting as a school principal led her to contemplate stepping down as chair in recent weeks. They incurred a deficit of 559,000 for 2019, so Cork GA needs to sort its finances out.
Yeah, it is finances on the front page of the Irish Times sports section. Niamh Brennan's got a great column here. FAI is at death's door and only government intervention can save it. And Jerry Thornley's headline, Leinster and Ireland sweat on Sexton's fitness. The main picture there, jumping for joy in Lisbon. Just a quick story from the Irish Times news section then. It is inside on page 3, I want to say. Page 2, Fia Kelly writing that Ross hopes to restore a majority of state funding to football at grassroots level, so intermediary to be used by government to channel funds due to lack of trust in the FAI. So cut out the middleman being the FAI, €2 million to be filtered down to the FAI soon, according to Shane Ross, which is going to help fund around 60 jobs in the FAI, community development officers nationwide and their associated programmes.
Yeah, which is great news. It's saving those jobs and giving some hope that there is a way out of this for... Because at one stage over the weekend, they were like, oh, we don't trust the FAI. And it was, okay, well, you know, that's going to cost jobs. So it looks like they're going to be able to save those jobs, which is hugely important. Again, loads more stuff came out over the weekend. The notion that somehow this isn't rock bottom because the Criminal Assets Bureau are going to be involved, that would actually be... All of that would be an improvement. I think that what the FAI did was what the people who were making that, Paul Cook is going to be there through the next period of time. What he did was actually the right thing to do on Friday in that press conference. Come out and say, this is how bad it's going to be. This is exactly what... and there are some unknowns about it, but like, we're in charge now and we have it. We're putting together a plan and we're trying to rebuild and restore the reputation. Like, everything else that happens now will be a historic issue that needs to be dealt with the full rigours of the law, and that's a good thing. I actually think any of that happens will be a good thing because it will lay bare even further what has happened, but they clearly are making steps to try and improve things now. Like, I have a lot of sympathy with Paul Cook and that group who are charged with changing things. I have no sympathy. Donald Conway seems like a good man, but he was on the board while all this was happening. The fact that they didn't know what was happening is on them as board members. And so the two board members who were around for any of this, Conway's going, it's the right thing to do. They have to go.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. I think obviously it's which way you look at rock bottom, and I guess if you're looking at how the FAI saves face, I suppose what you want to do is try and hammer home the fact that whatever investigation is done is done to people who have been cleared out already at this point in the FAI, and actually making an example of that is probably a positive step. If you especially want to attract further funding and kind of show that the new people here, it's not kind of an issue that might contain itself all the way through to the next decade of Irish football. I think as well, when it comes to accounts, we can never be too sure. Like, being debt-free by 2023 seems to almost be the new aim at this point, and then a stadium debt in 15 years or thereabouts. So not debt-free, but certainly kind of break even. Sorry.
Yeah.
To sort of arrest the decline that obviously has just been experienced.
Yeah, but look, and that's what you need. You need a plan, and they need to share what that plan is, and then everybody can start working to it. Fergus O'Dowd is with us to talk to us a little bit more about what's going to happen this week. Fergus, you invited, I think, everybody essentially to the committee on Wednesday morning. Can you just talk us through the process of what happens next and what you hope will happen when everybody does finally come before the committee this week?
Sure. We got a message from Pádraig O'Cady, Senator Pádraig O'Cady. He asked for an emergency meeting on Friday, and I consulted with my colleagues over the weekend, and we agreed last night that we called a meeting on Wednesday afternoon. Now, we already will have the women's hockey team in, and we're celebrating their success. So it'll be after that happens. So it'll be sometime in the afternoon of Wednesday. We've invited in the Sports Ireland. The invitation is going out this morning to Minister Ross, and obviously the FAI. And I do note that yesterday evening they did in fact say that they wanted to come before the committee, and clearly, we would certainly have a lot of questions for them. So that's really. So I think what I want to do anyway, is to look to the future and to see how things must change, but how they can change urgently, particularly in the appointment of the independent directors. Because I think whatever else happens, it's the new face, the new leadership that is moving in from the outside into the FAI, I think is what the people want. Now, I don't know who these independent directors are going to be. There was a national competition, or they circulated the advertisements nationally, and hopefully there will be absolutely clear leaders out there who will have the support of everybody to move soccer forward. So I think that's the most important thing, in my view, to get those independent directors. And what is the delay? Now, they may have issues, and I can understand that, around the financial situation, which is absolutely appalling. And I suppose if you were moving in as a director from the outside into a company with the balance sheet as was presented, with a deficit of greater than 55 million, obviously you would be thinking twice about it. So we need to talk about that issue and what guarantees can and must be given to ensure that the organisation, if it's still there, can move forward. But I think the new leadership, if you look at what happened with the Olympic Council when Mr. Hickey went, it transformed itself basically by Sarah Keane. I'm not suggesting that that's what will happen here, but I think we need something like that to happen.
Yeah, look, Fergus, that's a really good point, because actually that question was posed at the press conference the other day about whether or not they were even thinking about a rebrand, and it's not on their agenda at the moment. But certainly, if the question gets asked by your committee, things can suddenly become part of the common discourse. We could all start going, that's not a bad idea. Now, Quinn called for it on this show on Friday, and actually, right. it makes perfect sense that the FAI, this could be the end of the FAI, and that might be no bad thing. It will be an opportunity for them to reconstitute their own constitution, to change some of the structures that allowed what happened over the last decade and a half, and maybe even before that, to transpire, where the power became so concentrated, the board became so old, so calcified, that a new organisation might have structures that don't allow the same power to emerge the way it has in the past.
Yeah, well, there are some changes proposed already, that whoever the new permanent CEO will be, that he or she is not a member of the board, and they are accountable to the board. And I think what happened with the old board was that it was captured by their chief executive, and a total and absolute influence over everything and everybody, it appears, and nobody asked a question. So, I mean, that's unbelievable. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So, I mean, there has to be structural change, but I think a new face, new leadership.
A new organisation.
Then is obviously the Minister Ross and his efforts in relation to women's soccer, and his commitment now to get that 2 million to the youth support services, and I think it's about 60 full-time people who work right around the country with young people. So I think that's very welcome as well. So there's good things happening, but obviously there's a lot of other things that have to happen as well. And I'm quite sure our committee will have very serious and probing questions for Mr. Conway and his board when they do come in. And I mean, I remember the last question I asked him: would they do a forensic audit? And 3 times he didn't answer that question. Now it's done, and obviously we don't know the outcome of the COSI audit itself. We haven't heard their internal Mazars audit. What's happening with that? Will they bring that to us on Wednesday? Well, I hope they do, but obviously, clearly, if there's anything legal or anything for the Guardian, we can't discuss that. But, you know, what will they put in the public domain now in terms of what they additionally know, even as a result of their own inquiries? You know, I think that would be.
Yeah, hugely important, obviously, that we do begin to get some more transparency from the organisation and a commitment to it into the future. Just in terms of the actual other parties involved in all of this, do you believe that Sport Ireland have questions to answer about their relationship? Or do you believe that the Minister has questions to answer with his relationship? He's on the record as saying that he thought John Delaney was doing a fine job.
Well, I suppose he was looking at the audit report of last year, and we saw that it looked like a fine job, but I think it was a positive balance turned into a huge loss. People have to take the auditor accounts at face value, and there are questions about the auditors as well. You know, now I'm very much aware that the auditors have not given their commitment to support this particular. You know, that they haven't signed off on this audit because there may be issues that they don't know about. But I think that Sports Ireland, from what I understand, the COSI audit did show that the Sports Ireland funding was fully and appropriately spent. But going beyond, by going beyond the money that the government actually gave them, and by going into the COSI forensic audit, that showed up serious and other structural issues within that organisation that would probably never have come to light were it not done. So I think that the question is, yes, Sport Ireland need to have greater powers if they don't already use them, and they didn't use them if they have them in relation to the FAI up to now, to go in and look behind the auditing of the money that they give, but to say that the sports organisation is competent and can in fact handle in the appropriate way, you know, public funding, and they have checks and balances in their accounting and in their administrative system, you know, which are probing and which will identify and pursue issues like have arisen in the FAI. And I think that's what has been missing. That has certainly been missing.
Yeah, certainly the whole issue of compliance is one that is going to be a massive one for the FAI. And look, I think all the other sports organisations who receive funding probably need to have a look at their own compliance right across the board. This issue comes up in other sports all the time. Just to go back to that question about whether or not you think the FAI could rebrand, is that something you would personally be in favour of?
Well, when I looked at those men, and they were all men, I say, hey guys, you're going to have to change. You're going to have a gender balance. You're going to have new directors. Personally, I want all new faces. Now, I know that a number of those people, and most of them, bar two, were never on the board before, and I know that they couldn't have known what was going on. But the people who could have known and didn't, I mean, I think they have to go immediately. I don't think there's any case for them to be there any longer. To get confidence and listening and watching the parents and the young people over the weekend on the TV right around the country commenting on this issue, they want total change as well. So, like, I'm not a corporate person. Sorry, I'm not a corporate. I don't have any qualifications in corporate knowledge or anything like that. But to me, I would love to see a new organisation if it can be done. But the problem is the debts are there. And if the organisation goes into liquidation, what happens to them? What happens to all the assets? So, there are huge questions that I can't answer, but I think we'll have to ask. But it certainly needs absolutely new, clearly defined change, new leadership, absolutely, utterly, totally. And I think that's why we need those independent directors. And if they know who they are, if those directors need reassurances, I'm sure Sport Ireland and, the government should be prepared to help them, to take over that organisation now.
Yeah, you mentioned things like gender balance there as one of the areas that could be looked at under a new organisation. Is there anything else, any other specific areas that you'd have at the top of your list in terms of better governance by way of improvement?
Well, I think that a number of people around the country were talking about, that they'd like to participate in decision making. And is there a way that every single person that's registered with the FAI as a parent, if I'm a parent, that I'm automatically, that they might have some say in the leadership of that organisation, and to open it up and to make sure that there's maximum participation democratically of all members and of all parents, everybody. I mean, they're all part of the soccer family, and they should all have a say in the soccer future and in its management, that there should be a significant role for them. Now, I don't know how you do that, but I do think that is an important and good principle. So I would like to see that. I know there may be at the moment that you join a club and you vote for your club and so on. But I think the broader involvement, the better, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree with that. Fergus, good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Fergus they're giving us some thoughts ahead of the joint Oireachtas committee meeting this week, which they've invited everybody to, and hopefully everybody will show up. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with Kenny Cunningham's thoughts on the weekend after this.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
Do you think there'd be an atmosphere in a dressing room where if a very religious player made it difficult for a player who came out, where the dressing room would say, you need to watch yourself here?
No, I think, look, if it happened in a changing room that I was in and somebody said to me, I'm of a certain religious belief, then I would say, listen, that's fine. You want to be like that? Okay, but you don't bring that into this changing room. You treat him with the respect that he deserves as a human being. He's your colleague, you work with him, you work for the team first and foremost, and you put the team first.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1. This is OTB Sports Radio.
From music to rock out to, chill out to, and dance to. From sweater weather to workout playlists. Whatever mood you're in, Go Loud has music to match. Download the Go Loud app now or add us on your smart speaker. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio, and music to your ears. Go Loud!
OTB AM.
Players, every time you mention it, it's lads who know the club as players. Now, it's a different remit. I keep saying it in terms of iconic players. Now, great players, these guys. Freddie Ljungberg in terms of those brilliant Arsenal teams under Wenger. Arteta as well. My concern, again, is that Freddie Ljungberg never managed before. Might be doing good things coaching the youth, but it's a different ask. Arteta getting a brilliant, intense education under Pep Guardiola, but he's never managed before. Now, we've seen this so often, is that these coaches or these new managers get jobs by association. Anyone who bumped into Jose Mourinho invariably seemed to get a job. Same with Klopp. And we know of all those Manchester United players under Ferguson who got jobs on the back of being under one of the greatest managers we've ever seen. My concern is that Arsenal are going to make a decision on emotion in terms of getting an so-called Arsenal person back. No. If they have got any connection to Arsenal, that's an add-on, a bonus, but it can't be a priority. Just get the best man for the job. And this is what's frustrating me, is that a lot of people talk about Vieira. Yes, an iconic captain, but it's not set the world alight in terms of in League One, in terms of being in New York. Certainly, there was a lot of talk about Henry. He failed at Monaco for whatever reasons, trying to rebuild himself now in MLS in Montreal. I just want him to get a manager who knows the size of this task, because it's a massive rebuilding job.
Yeah, we'll come back to Arsenal a little bit later, Robin. Kenny Cunningham is with us. Kenny, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
Let's talk about Manchester City first. This was the team that was supposed to be able to go toe for toe with Liverpool this year. Why have they failed again?
Oh, straight to it. I think there's a number of factors, Ger. I think obviously the most glaring one is the deficiencies they have in kind of central defence. You could even have made that argument, Ger, prior to Laporte's injury start of the season, that they need another centre-half to play alongside him of some quality. They didn't do that. Talk about Maguire coming in, it never happened. Laporte's injury now has meant there's a real weakness at the centre of defence, but it's not the only thing. We'd be foolish to suggest that suddenly reports arrival back in the team and all the problems are going to resolve themselves. For me, it's been obvious since the start of the season, Joe. One of their biggest attributes under Guardiola was really how hard they worked out possession of the football. And we've all seen kind of clips of that kind of counter press when they gave the ball away in the opposition half, how quickly they were to win it back. Closest man went and engaged the player in possession. Everybody followed. They swarmed all over the opposition. It was a key component of his team. Indeed, even his previous teams, Barcelona in particular, how hard they worked out of possession. It was almost manic, Jared, in terms of how difficult they made it for teams to actually counter-attack them. They spent so much time in the opposition half the pitch. When they gave it away, and an opposition team tried to counter-attack them, which you could actually do because there was always that bit of inherent weakness across the Manchester City defensive line, even when they're winning league titles. You couldn't get at them, Ger, because they worked you so hard in your own half the pitch. You couldn't make those 1, 2, 3 consecutive passes to work your way up the pitch. They immediately broke up possession again, and so their work rate, their ethic, their kind of appetite to win the ball back, and the legs in the team meant that, for me, that was one of their biggest attributes, as good as a footballing team they were. And we haven't seen that this season. They've been far too passive. Too many games, Jared, but looking at them out of possession, and a number of them are walking, and when they go and press, it's kind of half-hearted. So now you have a situation where opposition teams, they don't necessarily have to be the very best teams, when they win the ball back off City, now have a little bit of time to make a couple of passes. Now they have time for individual players to actually travel with possession of the ball, which you saw in abundance at the weekend. Manchester United, a very good Premiership side, some outstanding attacking players, really cut through them at will when they won back to possession of the ball. The amount of times that they won possession in their own half, and ended up in the Manchester City edge of their penalty box without one Manchester City player laying their glove on them was absolutely phenomenal. It was so obvious in that first half. So, yeah, so those two things fundamentally, I think, put them two together, and that's the big reason why they're trailing Liverpool and indeed Leicester City by such a margin.
Like the confusing or the performances is equally confusing when it comes to Manchester United as it is for Manchester City and their performances this season as well. Like you kind of look at what you said there, and Manchester United without the ball, how good they are on the counter attack. Is that the single biggest reason why we haven't seen consistency from Manchester United this year? That when they are expected to dominate a game and have possession against lesser teams, they're just not comfortable yet in dominating a game like that. They're actually just better placed without the ball.
Yeah, I think you're right on. It's a good point. If you look at the makeup of their team, particularly that key central midfield area. Now, McTominay and Fred played well at the weekend, but you look at their kind of main attributes, is that kind of pace, athleticism. I'm talking about United's from forward in terms of the pace they have. Well, you could actually enlarge it out to the midfield too as well, 6, and even the wing-back stays your 8 in terms of the amount of pace they have in the team. So McTominay and Fred can get around the pitch, they can break up attacks, they can make tackles, they can get box-to-box, pick and choose their moments as well if they want to break forward. But you're right, in possession of football, in terms of being a pair who can get on the ball and actually dictate the pace of the game, it would actually break lines with their passing and have a whole range of passing to the game, can play that Ivan Needle pass, which you've seen Pogba on occasion, that 30-40 yard pass over the shoulder of opposition centre halves for the likes of Rashford, Martial, Ronaldo. No, they haven't. So you're absolutely right. If there's Manchester United supporters out there aspiring to this team, develop into that type of team, possession-based, where your centre midfielders are going to dominate possession and dominate play with an array of passing. No, that's not going to happen. But I don't know. I've never been one. I'm not a Manchester United supporter, obviously, who kind of long for those days to come back. For me, it's Manchester United finding the system of play which best suits the players they have available to them, which is actually successful. And that Manchester United performance of the weekend, I really enjoyed that performance. I mean, maybe a Manchester United connoisseur was touched something a little bit, but I certainly wasn't. I thought that was a fantastic Manchester, and I really enjoyed it. The way they attacked, how quickly they counter-attacked, how incisive they were. That was great football for me. They were defensively secure at the other end of the pitch as well. Nice, compact defensive shape. So for me, if there was a way forward for Manchester United, certainly in the short term, that performance at the weekend was it.
I'd just be keen to get your take as well, Kenny, on Aaron Wan-Bissaka's performance, just from a defensive standpoint, the attributes that he's been showing this season to basically put himself right up there as one of the best one-on-one defenders in the Premier League.
Oh, it was fantastic. Him and the level Sterling's been playing at. For the young lad to have the confidence, and when you say he kind of really picked up the challenge, he was so aggressive in his defending, and he can kind of do that because he's so quick and his recovery is so quick. He's a kind of quite a long-legged lad, but he absolutely eats up the ground. So Sterling was getting the ball. I've never seen a defender get as close to Sterling when he had his first touch, Sterling, because he frightened you with his pace, Sterling. You know, as a full-back, you get too close, he plays a little combination, he plays in behind you, you're dead. So invariably defenders drop 5 yards off, maybe allow the winger, one of their centre midfielders to get across, wait for the reinforcements to arrive. It's almost a delay tactic for every full-back against him. Not Bissaka, aggressive, got tight to him all the time. And when he could make a tackle and make contact, he did. He won the ball off him early in a number of attacks. But when Sterling plays that little clever 1-2 and the ball gets slid down the side, as he's had so much success, this lad backs himself in terms of recovery. His recovery is absolutely phenomenal. It's like that go-go gadget leg when he recovers, almost always stick it out with toe and a leg to make a tackle. So it was brilliant. I mean, it was a great contest. He didn't win every 1-to-1 with Sterling, but he won his fair share. It was a brilliant contest. Someone so young and still so inexperienced in Premiership terms. It was an amazing performance, I thought. So
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's got the gig to the end of the season, right? At least.
Yeah, I always felt he would, in all honesty. I always felt it was his. They'd made such a commitment, the owners would to him at various stages during the season, kind of publicly backing him in terms of Solskjaer kind of quoted that this is the plan, the short, medium term. I've sat down with the owners, this is how we see it. It almost would have been almost public humiliation for Woodward, self-humiliation for him to come out and actually show Solskjaer at the door. I think Pochettino's arrival maybe made it a little bit more interest, but I always felt hand on heart Solskjaer would be there at the very minimum till the end of the season, except in exceptional circumstances. And obviously it's easy to say off the back of the last two games that'll be the case, but I always felt it would. And I think between now and then, Woodward and his obvious advisors will be maybe having a look in terms of how much progression is made between now and the end of the season. If it continues to develop, things continue to improve, that feel-good comes back, yes, Solskjaer can be comfortably there beyond next season. If not, and we have another little dip, which has been the case this season, been very much up and down, you know, there's still a possibility that they could make that decision and, show him the trapdoor at the end of the season. But I think I've always felt he was safe till the end of the season.
I want to talk a little bit about Leicester before we wrap up, because the quality of football that they're playing, how much of it yesterday's performance was down to Villa being completely naive and playing such a high line and actually literally playing into Leicester's hands, and how much of it actually down to here's a team playing really well, very confident, very clear identity?
Yeah, and I'd have to give Leicester a huge amount of credit. I've watched them an awful lot this season. I really fancied the chance at the start of the season. I watched a lot of them at the tail end of last season, and I really like the balance of the team, the qualities which they have, the cross to the defensive line, the partnership of Evans and Sancho looked as if it was only going to get better and better. The kind of balance of midfield, and Didi just sitting there, counterbalanced by Maddison and Tielemans. I don't think Rodgers got it quite right at the start of the season. He shifted Maddison out into the left wing a couple of times for a couple of high-profile games. I'm thinking of Manchester United away and Liverpool, and I thought it upset the balance of the team. But when Leicester play with predominantly Maddison and Tielemans and those kind of number 8 central midfield areas, I mean, they played a diamond yesterday. Again, he slightly changed it. He was keen to get Ian Nacho into the team, the front two of Vardy. So regardless of how he's thinking it would have laid, the balance of the team is absolutely fantastic, Jared. They're a top quality team, Jared. There's no getting away from it. I don't see them going anywhere. They've no European competition this season. Yeah, a couple of domestic cup competitions, but they're playing week to week. For me, there's kind of a bit of a holy trinity of players there in the team. Again, since the start of the season, I've always felt they keep Johnny Evans and Vardy fit for large chunks of this season at both ends of the pitch, and Maddison as well. If they can keep those lads fit, certainly now between now and the end of the season, for me that top 4 is almost guaranteed, because they're that good. The attacking qualities which they have, the defensive strength as well, and Didi sitting in front of that back 4, which is only going to get better. Ricardo at right back's been absolutely amazing. From his actual heartbeat, he's the heartbeat of that team. Those rampaging runs from those full-back positions absolutely lifts the whole team, the whole crowd as well. So he's done a great job. He's inherited a great bunch of players there, Rodgers, and he knew it. That's why he took the job. That's why he jumped early from Celtic. He knew this was a great opportunity for him, but to be credit to him, he's pulled it together very nice in a very short period of time, and they really are the real deal.
You were also watching Everton-Chelsea at the weekend, Kenny. Chelsea get more and more unpredictable, it seems, as the weeks rage on, but it was all about Duncan Ferguson and his unbelievable celebrations. You talk about lifting a crowd there. The manager on the sideline is probably doing it at Goodison.
It was great to see. It really was. You could sense the atmosphere, even on the screens. The place was absolutely rocking. That's the way it should be up there at Goodison. I played up there a lot of times. I always enjoyed me football up there. The atmosphere was fantastic, and haven't sensed too much of that certainly this season. So you could even in Ferguson's programme notes, he wanted to get back to that a little bit, and that performance was just all about kind of not just kind of guts and determination and getting around the pitch and making your tackles. There was a nice shape to the team as well in terms of how he put them onto the pitch, but they absolutely just ran through brick walls for him, and it just goes to show you how much you can achieve even if you have those basic attributes as a team. Chelsea be kicking themselves. A couple of the goals which they conceded, the second and third goal, lads, was awful schoolboy defender. They actually had enough of the game, Chelsea, even to have gone and won that. So that was an opportunity missed for them. I don't think there'll be a problem there with them, Chelsea, going forward. I'm sure Lampard will rectify that. But from an Everton perspective, that's the kind of Everton performance which the Goodison faithful now will demand, and it'd be interesting to see now whether Ferguson's that performance has made the owners think in terms of the need to get somebody in. Seemed to be as quickly as possible, like a couple of days ago. Just wonder now whether to take a step back, have a couple of deep breaths, and maybe give Ferguson maybe a slightly longer period of time, potentially even keep him as caretaker till the end of the season, have a good look at him over the second half of the season to see potentially if he's the man to lead him forward.
Kenny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, lads.
It's Kenny Cunningham giving us his thoughts there. Now let's move on, because Daniel Harris is with us to talk to us about Man United and their game against Manchester City. Daniel, pretty effusive in your praise for just how well Manchester United were playing, particularly in that first half. Is this the turning point that they needed for everybody just to calm down about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and really get back to that situation where we were talking about last week, where he has a plan, there is an attempt to build a new team, and it's going to get there eventually?
We don't know if it's going to get there eventually, but I felt like that performance was coming, in that they played really well at Norwich, they played well against Tottenham, and the turning point really wasn't so much that performance exactly, it was just having all the players back. Yes, the weekend was maybe the first time since the first game of the season or the second game of the season where he's been able to pick anything approaching his first 11 really, and this was also without Pogba. So I think that there have been signs over the last few weeks of growing understanding with the forwards and the ability to play through midfield. And I think this was the first time probably since Fergie was manager where United went and took on a good team playing a game of football. Whereas previously they played City or Liverpool and they've tried to sit back and hit on the break. For people to say that United just countered really well in the first half isn't really true, because what they really did was they played through midfield. I think Solskjaer said it himself, whether it was 4 passes or whether it was 7 passes, they played really good attacking football, and I think that's true.
At the same time, there is kind of an element of it where they, on transition, are still a very, very impressive side, Daniel, and granted there is a bit more control around midfield. You are seeing clear improvements, I think, from certain midfield players. But is it not a case that they are still at their most dangerous form on the break while still accepting that they are getting better while controlling possession?
Yeah, I think that's true, because the strength of the team isn't the midfield. The midfield has become serviceable. McTominay's become a good midfield player, but otherwise, Fred and Lingard have assets of various descriptions, but you would want to upgrade both of them if you wanted United to be winning trophies, regular trophies again. So yeah, I mean, the strength of the team is still the pace of the attackers, but in order to get that pace from the attackers, you need the passing from midfield to be right as well. And there've been lots of other United teams who've probably been perhaps at their most dangerous on the break, but who are still able to play teams off the park playing through midfield.
Is there no possibility that Fred can do that and become that player? That actually we've seen enough improvements. I don't know, have we seen enough? I'm going to rephrase it. Have we seen enough improvement to suggest if there was more improvement at the same level that maybe he might be that good?
Maybe. I haven't exactly seen it yet. I think the problem with Fred is there are two very big problems with Fred. One of them is his right foot, which is one of the worst feet I've ever witnessed, and up there or down there with Antonio Valencia's left foot. And until you're able to regularly pass accurately off both feet to play that position that Michael Carrick did is hard, very hard. And the other thing about Fred is the carelessness. And that is probably quite a deep-seated mental thing, that he's not careful in possession. And by that, I don't mean that he should never take risks. I mean, he has an ability to botch 5 and 10 yard square passes quite regularly. And I mean, we saw that even against Tottenham. I remember there was I think there was a shot actually that he took that didn't even go out for a throw-in. And I'm picking one example there, but Fred is extremely careless in possession. And in order to change that, it is partly a matter of confidence, but it's partly a matter of mindset, how he approaches the game. So it's hard to see that he will become as good a player as Roy Keane and Paul Scholes and Brian Robson and Paul Ince, or even Michael Carrick and Darren Fletcher. But that's the standard that United's midfield player needs to be at. But Fred is definitely making a case for himself to at least be a very useful squad player when someone better than him arrives.
What about the front three? Are the front three getting close to a situation where you would be happy to compare them with the great front threes of the rest of Europe or Manchester United's heritage?
Not yet, but there's work to do. Daniel James, you could see more or less from minute one, where you first watched him play for United, that he was the real deal in numerous aspects. Whether he's actually going to have the quality to go and be a regular goal scorer, a regular goal maker, a regular contributor in big games, it's very hard to say at this point. But in terms of the raw materials you would want from a player, it was very obvious very quickly that Daniel James had all of those things and particularly had the mentality. And we saw again at the weekend that he doesn't let games pass him by. And particularly for wingers who flit in and out of games, that is a very useful quality. Anthony Martial, we all know that he is ludicrously talented. The problem with him is application and making runs that he can't necessarily be bothered to make. Is he always going to be prepared to run channels when he's not sure he's going to get the ball? We haven't seen the answer to that. But if he produces the level of performance he produced at City every week, then for sure he is a high-level player who's plenty good enough to play for Man United. But we don't know what we're going to get from him, because just quite recently he was listless at Bournemouth, where you have these matches where United maybe aren't playing well. Your centre forward should still be occupying two centre backs. They should know they're in a game when they face him. And marking Anthony Martial on a bad day seems like an absolute piece of piss, and it should never be like that for an elite level centre forward. So he should be shown that performance, and it's suggested to him in strong terms that someone will have a quiet word in his ear every time his effort levels drop below what he delivered the other day. But I've seen too much of Anthony Martial to take one performance from him and say, that is what I expect to see all the time. But that is what I would like to see all the time, for sure.
I think we're a good bit away from a conclusion on Harry Maguire at this point, Daniel. We were speaking to you about him last week, and I think the general consensus perhaps during one of United's ebbs a couple of weeks ago was that there was almost a Sanchez-esque vibe to it, that Manchester City had perhaps looked interested in the player, and then Manchester United swooped in and paid above the odds for the player. I think that opinion has been blown out of the water now. I think you can't really suggest that he's been a flop at all. It's probably somewhere in the middle at this moment, but with each passing week, you're seeing now that perhaps Manchester City might have actually missed out on the guy, especially with their performances at central defence, because he's starting to look the part at Man United.
Yeah, he's been okay, Maguire. I'd say that he's probably been better than what there was before. There's a problem with his partnership with Lindelof because they're quite similar players, and actually I haven't seen enough of Axel Tuanzebe to know whether he's of the required quality. But he's definitely a better profile to partner Maguire than Lindelof, who's not been good at all this season, but has been really good this week. The thing about Maguire is that for £80 million, you should be getting one of the best defenders in the world, who you would really expect to take a couple of weeks to settle, but a couple of weeks or a month, not settle until now. And what we haven't seen from Maguire is that kind of one-man wall that you would expect. So I hoped that United were basically getting Steve Bruce with the first touch, someone who would get in the way of everything, but would also organise everyone else. And those games where you're under the pump with 10 minutes to go, it would be his face or his shoulder or his ear or his arse that blocked everything. And I haven't seen performances like that from Maguire. And the truth is, I didn't really see a performance like that from Maguire on Saturday either. The person who I felt came closest to delivering that performance was Wan-Bissaka, who was excellent. But he was good against Tottenham, although I thought Lindelof was better against Tottenham, and he was good at the weekend. And ultimately, playing Manchester City for 90 minutes and conceding one goal from a set piece is not a bad reflection of how well the defence have played. But I do think that in order for Maguire to be worth not just the money, but to be worth the opportunity cost of not spending that money on someone else, there is still a level of performance to which he needs to ascend. But yeah, I thought he was good at the weekend.
Yeah, the trouble with the opportunity cost is you never actually get that back. On what needs to happen now for the rest of the season, like we were talking with Kenny Cunningham just before you came on air, and he made the point that Woodward had essentially made his bed with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he did that round of interviews recently. You know, he said that they were committed to him. Frequently, people in his position have made that, and then when a better option comes along, they've changed their minds. But it would have been another embarrassing climb down if they were to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the middle of the season, having gone so publicly in his favour. What needs to happen between now and the end of the season, so at the end of the season they don't decide, well, actually there are better options out there?
I think now, unless there's a disaster, he's safe. I think the main thing that needs to happen, and what people haven't perhaps credited too much, has been United have never been as bad as they've looked on certain occasions, because the main thing that really needs to happen is the players need to stay fit. Because when United have had most of their players available, they have generally delivered fair performances. And the reason why things have improved now isn't that suddenly the penny has dropped with Solskjaer's tactics, or suddenly they understand his tactics, or he's changed his tactics. It's that McTominay's fit and Martial's fit. And the way that United want to play is very difficult and almost impossible without those two players, because Martial is the person who can hold the ball up front, who allows Rashford to play on the left, who gives you different options in the way that you want to build attacks when he can be bothered. And McTominay is the only midfielder United have who can get box to box, who can deliver a level of performance, a consistent level of performance, who can put himself in the way of things at the back, but also can inject some drive going forward. And without those two players, it's going to be mix and match. And that's the bed that Woodward has made, into which Solskjaer has basically had to lie, is that there wasn't enough money made available to strengthen the team in the way the team needed to be strengthened. But in terms of what they can actually do footballistically, as Arsene Wenger would say, to make things better, is they just need to keep doing what they're doing. They need to keep playing with requisite energy and effort and intelligence. And we've seen that they're able to do that, because they played Spurs off the pitch the other night, and for half an hour they gave the best display of the Fergie era, of the post-Fergie era by far. So we've seen that they can do it. I think with young players still, and some of them are still quite young, you will get some inconsistencies, but at least now they know what a proper performance looks like and what they have to do in order to deliver that proper performance. And if the players stay fit, there's no reason to think that they won't be able to carry on doing it, except I would say one caveat is that against City, after half an hour when they went 2-0 up, they started sitting slightly deeper. And I was actually pleased as a United supporter, really, to hear Solskjaer say subsequently that this was a mistake that they'd made, that he'd noticed, because there has been a tendency with Solskjaer and to take, not necessarily, I guess we could call it a negative option. When United are leading, when they scored the third goal against Sheffield United, for example, if United had carried on playing, it looked much more like they were going to win that game 4 or 5-2 than they were going to draw or lose the game. But as soon as United went 3-2 up, him and Phelan had a conflab about who they should bring on, which defensive-minded player they should bring on. And the defence is not good enough to see away 1-goal leads defending for 15 minutes, where the other team is able to get up ahead, able to work up some pressure and work up ahead of steam. So what they need to do is they need to stay confident and brave in the way that they play in minute 1, is the way that they should be playing in minute 80 as well, even if they've got a 1-goal lead, because the team's strength is going forward. And if you're playing against Manchester United, what you don't want is you don't want their attackers on the ball. You'd be much happier if their defenders are sitting back, if they're just booting it away and then sitting back and giving you the opportunity to build another attack. So I was pleased to note that that is not something that Solskjaer necessarily wants them to do, but they need to realise that, and he also needs to realise that when they've got a 1-goal lead, they're still better off most of the time looking for another goal, because the attackers are better than the defenders.
Daniel, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
All right, see you again, chaps.
Daniel Harris there giving us some thoughts on Manchester United's victory against Manchester City in the derby on Saturday evening. A couple of other things of note over the course of the weekend. Aaron Connolly had a dead leg and so didn't make the matchday squad at all for Brighton. And Troy Parrott got the match ball, despite the fact he wasn't man of the match in Spurs' 5-0 win. Afterwards, Mourinho said he gave it to him because it's more special for him than it is for anybody else. It's his debut. The biggest cheer of the day from the crowd was when Troy Parrott came on. So the Spurs fans are as excited as we are about Troy Parrott. And Jose Mourinho said that he might start against Bayern. Harry Kane's not going to play.
Wouldn't be A bad old week then for Troy Parrott. I have noticed that thing that, like, when you type in Troy Parrott's name to social media, it's all the Tottenham fan forums. It's not the Irish football fan forums.
Yeah.
The Spurs faithful are very, very excited for this guy. These are the people who've been watching pre-season tournaments as much as they probably kept an eye on some Ireland underage and indeed senior games over the past couple of months as well. So no pressure on him, but it's hopefully going to be a big week.
As one of Ireland's most famous YouTubers now, you're getting recognised everywhere you go. So James Burke has been in touch this morning to say Owen was in great form at the Fontaines gig on Saturday night. What a man!
Well, great. You're what a man as well, exactly how.
What were you getting up to? I mean, come on, it's like the Fontaines DC is like one of the biggest, most at it, the powerhouse of 2019. They're like one of the biggest, most successful things in the world. And this guy's noticing you while he's at that gig.
It's incredible how priorities get missed during a silly season.
What are you up to, Owen?
Just having a good time.
Yeah. You were lit.
Yeah, we went for a very early dinner on Saturday, to be honest, too early. It was like a 4 o'clock start, so that might have resulted in something, I don't know what, but something. No, nothing major. I'm joking, nothing major.
Keep talking.
I've done the verbal equivalent of just backing myself into a corner here, and the fault is entirely rests at my own feet.
Attorney on the grounds that it may incriminate me, I'm going to say nothing.
Well, exactly. I should have just shut up there. I was actually going to bring you some news here.
Okay, go for it.
There's just on since we were talking about Manchester Derby. This is just an interesting line from David Ornstein in The Athletic this morning, that The Athletic are aware of a position that Manchester City have been looking to fill. It's understood that candidates for this position have been approached about a high-performance role, and it was made clear during those conversations that this might be the last campaign of Guardiola's tenure. That is not something that we've got any kind of sign of at the moment. He seems to be fairly tight-lipped on whether or not he's going to leave after the season, but that'll be very interesting.
Right?
A huge possibility, I would have thought. And
apparently his wife moved back to Barcelona.
Yeah, that's something that was mentioned as well on the same site last week. So they're clearly trying to revamp how things are done on a high-performance level, perhaps take a little bit of pressure off Guardiola, or perhaps get ready for a new manager.
All right, 8:36 this morning here on OTB AM. It's time for this.
Olympic champion, I've dreamed of this moment so many times before.
Right, it's today's round 16 clash, our 6th of 8. Round of 16 is a long old round, isn't it? Tipperary's 2010 All-Ireland win, which obviously stopped the 5 in a row, which up to that point had never been done, versus Dean Rock and the GPS. Here's the first video to remind you of what happened in 2010.
One way or the other, we're going to see history made this afternoon. Either the first 5 in a row or a drive for 5 blocked for the second time in under 30 years.
Yeah, it's been very tight, a lot of hard tackling and, intriguing really, not as stylish as you might have expected. No score from play so far, but still very interesting.
Huge one down towards Lark Corbin. He's got it! He's scored! Maxim has their advantage, but Owen Larkin's raiding inside here to Power. Oh, what a goal! Back up to the forwards again, brilliantly caught by McGrath. On to Lark Corbin. They fire hurleys at it, but nobody's able to stop Lark Corbin. They race for it, breaking down here, and now McGrath has found the back of the net. As that ball is caught inside there by Patrick Marr, and it's swept in the end, and it's finished in the back of the net. And there is another one for Tipperary. It's all over. And Tipperary have won the All-Ireland dramatically.
So that was very memorable, but is Lar following Tommy around not a more memorable moment? When it comes down to it, like, that was in reading in the ears, right? But definitely so would Lar following Tommy around. And if you were doing a reeling in the decade, then Lar following Tommy around should actually probably be the most memorable moment of the decade.
No, it's actually the exact opposite of that. The 2010 All-Ireland win is the moment that makes reeling in the years because it has crossover appeal. I think Lar following Tommy around has appeal to a lot of people who would have watched the preceding couple of years. It became a meme within sports circles.
No, you say crossover, like, people were getting married with, like, Lar and Tommy things going on.
Like, probably really strong, legitimate sports fans. Like, I think the whole Kilkenny empire being stopped for 5 in a row just had this massive national appeal. The manner in which it was done, with one of the all-time great performances in an All-Ireland final, against a team that, let's face it, we hated that Kilkenny team. I know you claim that you like that Kilkenny team. You like to see these.
They were amazing.
Of course, as hurlers, they were amazing, but
and they were
villains. They were villains.
They weren't really.
Every single one of them were villains, perceived to be.
Probably was like in his piece about Jim Gavin saying, "Oh, they blew everybody out," but they didn't. They only blew that Waterford team out. They had great games against loads of other teams along the way.
Well,
the
2009 final was great.
It was a semi-final against Waterford, or a quarter-final against Waterford. That was really close. That might have even been a draw. That was sensational. I remember Shefflin basically having his hand broken and finishing out the season, of course, and probably winning an All-Star. But like, they were attacking him. It was just amazing.
They were a brilliant team, and I think as time has passed and perhaps people have come out and you've actually got to see them as pundits and stuff like that, you start to realise that actually they're not as dislikable. And I think as hurlers, you always had huge respect for them. And
the Cork propaganda, that's you just bought into it straight away. You're like, okay, yeah, this must be true. The Stepford Wives line, oh yeah, it's true.
Nothing to do with the personalities though, it was all to do with the edge with which they brought the proceedings.
We should have embraced that. It was class.
Maybe we should have.
They're exactly what Dublin do.
We're getting away from the point here anyway, but that, for me, the most memorable Lar Corbett moment of the decade was... the
most memorable Kilkenny moment was them being beaten.
Yes. Well, there's no question about that. Most memorable Kilkenny moment is them being beaten.
They did it 3 in a row after that. They come back to do it 3 in a row.
That is actually remarkable when you think about it. That is actually remarkable. It's almost as impressive as the 4 in a row.
Stefan wins 10.
Yeah, they're
10 All-Ireland medals.
I
Not
would
even in our list.
To be honest with you,
we've taken their biggest beating.
Yeah,
not their biggest beating, but like the one that hurts the most.
For me, it'd be Lar, it'd be Limerick, it'd be Clare, and then it'd be like Kilkenny, 3 in a row, or Galway for like the completion of the rest of the top 5 hurling moments of the decade.
Dean Rock and the GPS. Let's remind yourself of Dean Rock's last-minute free in 2017 to win All-Ireland.
You've had a lot thrown at you in your career. A GPS, I imagine, is a new thing. That's never happened before.
Look, I didn't actually notice anything at the time or anything, so look, it's irrelevant really, you know. And
did you feel something hitting off you? Did you realise what was going on at the time?
No, not at all. Look, you get the bit of verbals and stuff when you're kicking free kicks, and that's all natural, you know. Everyone does that when a free taker's taking a free kick. It's the same with most kind of field sports like that in that sense. So look, I was just really concentrated on my own strike and the execution of my kick, and once I did that, I knew the ball would go over the bar.
When you found out afterwards what it was, did you think, wow, that's never happened before?
Look, just whatever, like, you know, just take it in your stride. As I said, it's irrelevant, so it's, you know, just there's no major issue with it.
No major issue with it. Playing down your chance of getting into the quarterfinals there, Dean.
Yeah, it's you got to ham it up. Say,
oh my God, it's shocking behaviour.
It exploded at my foot. It was.
But you know what? I had that tunnel vision.
One of those things that...
I knew about it, but I had tunnel vision. That wouldn't make that much sense, but...
Too much of a high-performing athlete to be affected by something that's... We obviously read into way more than he did. Something that kind of came out afterwards was like a strange thing that... Did we notice it at the time?
I didn't.
I can't
at the game.
You were at the game. I was watching it at home. And I can't quite remember. I can remember just like being like wildfire on social media afterwards. But it's not. We're not just distilling this down to Lee Keegan. It's also Dean Rock having the stones to be able to do that after what was possibly one of the best All-Ireland finals of the decade as well.
This is on the list because it's the Dublin Mayo rivalry, essentially.
And because of the Dublin
This is the representative of that. It comes down to this one moment, but it's actually the whole time that Dublin were doing the 5 in a row and Mayo's curse and the knocking on the door, and which all the stuff is happening now is kind of a function of that.
And to be fair, the specific targeting by Lee Keegan and the targeting of Lee Keegan when it came to Diarmuid Connolly, when it came to perhaps people in the media.
Dublin media.
Like, it was all brilliant. Like, it was just a distillation of the rivalry in that one photograph that we saw there. The GPS piece flying through the air at Dean
and
Rock.
The Dubs being completely
cold,
oblivious to it.
Yeah, or...
In a way, they're kind of oblivious to the rivalry.
Training themselves to be
pretty
oblivious.
good, but like, you know, they're just another team. Ultimately, it comes down to the Dubs being... I mean, Kerry, on the other hand, they're probably considered, because of all the history, the real rival. That's why they rebirthed that rivalry. Maybe makes things even more interesting for the Dublin footballers.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe the fact that they
sharpens them over the winter.
Had to go through a few games, and maybe their new manager will actually look to stoke rivalries rather than make the players oblivious to them. Like, wouldn't it be terrifying to have this Dublin team with their current level of quality, but with the noughties level of fire. And by fire I mean like rage.
90s level.
Okay, 90s level. I don't really remember. Like there's a good bit of fire in the noughties dubs as well. But if you combine those two things, like obviously the argument there
it's
is
all fake. In the noughties is all fake.
But the argument is there to be made that if we had that level of fire, it would take away from why the dubs are so good. But if you managed to combine those two things, you would just have a megazord of a villain, I reckon.
But the 90s team was hard.
Yeah, they were hard and successful, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, they desperately underachieved as well, considering, but there was lots of great teams around. Anyway, I digress. Who's going to win this?
2010.
Make the case for both of them.
Well, I'm firmly in Lara Corbett's camp here. It's the ending of a 5-in-a-row quest that probably deserved
Dublin's
to be
5-in-a-row
achieved.
didn't even make it, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Do we have another Dublin? Is this the only Dublin one in the last 16?
No, we got
Gloucester.
2011 coming up as well.
Yeah.
And I do think that the achievement of, I think, the 2019 All-Ireland finals is probably below 2017 and certainly below 2011.
Who's the greatest Irish sports team of all time?
Oh, that is such a good question.
Just very briefly, right? Who are the contenders?
Well, Dublin, Kilkenny.
The soccer team in
Soccer
1990.
team, yeah.
Who else?
Rugby team in...
Which rugby team?
2009. 2009, let's go for 2009.
Leinster?
Oh no, Ireland.
Leinster?
Ireland Grand Slam. And then, of course, well, the greatest sports team this island has possibly ever seen ever in Leinster winning the 2018 Pro 14.
But that's Adrian Barry's argument, right?
Sorry, we're getting away from this. The argument is about these two things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the Dublin team are like one of the greatest teams we've ever seen of all time. And they're not really properly represented in this last 16. So if you think that they should be, this is the one you want. You've got to vote for this.
No, 2011 is
now, I probably think that Kilkenny should be.
This is going to be a humdinger of a clash. 47%, 53%. Early doors yet. Very early doors yet.
Polls are live. It's actually gone back to 50-50 already.
The kind of mortality of an all-time great team is what makes
Lars
the
hat-trick
moment. The hat-trick. The previous disappointment, the emotion at the full time, the hurl effect at him. It was unexpected and it was just pure drama. And you've made the point here in the past that this was a decade where hurling was obviously at its best ever, and this was the catalyst for it. That rivalry was the catalyst for it. Tipperary and Kilkenny driving themselves onwards.
Right, Alan Quinlan's going to be in with us next. First, Mike McCarthy and Brendan Mackin were on commentary duty for us at Northampton against Leicester this weekend. Here's what they made of Leicester's performance.
Yeah, I think Leinster left a few tries out there, to be honest. I know they scored 7, but they left a few out there. And, you know, for me, I mentioned it during the game, was the impact of the bench. I mean, the bench, when you look through the list on the bench, you got Scott Fardy, who played in the World Cup final in 2015, you got Rob Kearney coming on, Tyke Furlong coming on. And, you know, when you've got those guys coming on, the experience they bring, the physicality they bring, it's very tough. And, you know, you can't really see past anyone beating Leinster in the Champions Cup, to be honest, after that performance.
It does make you wonder as well, Brendan. I mean, when you see so many of those players that were playing for Ireland in the World Cup and how they looked like they were just enjoying their rugby so much out there at times today, how Japan actually happened.
Yeah, I know. But sure, you saw today, you know, Northampton would kick off and then Leinster would string 3, 4, 5, 6 phases, have a crack, and then maybe get rid of the ball. Whereas, you know, in Ireland under different tactics, that were employed by the powers that be, it was like they weren't allowed to play. You know, it was like they weren't allowed to express themselves. You saw Larmour express himself today. You know, James Ryan, your pal Dev Toner.
My favourite player.
Your favourite person.
Yeah, he still hasn't scored in Europe though. So he's 239 games for Leinster, but he has never scored in Europe. So he needs to score next week.
But like you said, it just looked like they genuinely were enjoying themselves. You know, they were enjoying throwing it around. Robbie Henshaw was getting to use his pass, you know, use his footwork instead of just running into brick walls, and it looked like they were genuinely having fun.
Yeah, so straightforward enough from a Leinster perspective. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit concerned or forewarned about the fact that they did annihilate Northampton in the back-to-backs in Northampton in, was it 2014? We were talking about this with Dricko on Friday, and 13. And then the following week ended up losing that game, and it cost them a home quarter final. Ultimately, they feel like it cost them a tournament. It may well have done. Alan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Joe.
Let's talk Munster first. They've come in for a lot of criticism. Is it fair?
They were a little bit inaccurate, but it was just impossible to play, in particularly in the second half with the wind and the rain. And, you know, when you take a number of players out like Saracens did, the internationals, they still had 7 that started half the team against Leinster in the final in May. And a lot of good young players and a lot of fringe players and fringe internationals even. So it was a very, very dangerous prospect. I was actually quite nervous before the game, thinking that I hope people aren't underestimating that Saracen side, because they're quite effective and could cause problems, and they're not going to be easy. And Munster kind of started pretty well, and it was a real dogfight, and they had to work incredibly hard to kind of create any sort of space or anything. But Peter O'Mahony's try in the penalty put him 10-0 up, 10-3. Saracens missed a penalty then off the post, so would have made it 10-6 going in at half time. So Saracens had a very, very strong wind in the second half, and you were kind of fearful. But Munster, in fairness, they showed a lot of grit and determination to just get over the line. The unfortunate point from their point of view is Saracens got a losing bonus point, and that's massive for Mark McCall and his team, because
it keeps them in it.
Yeah, if you start talking about the permutations, they beat Munster next week. They go to, I think Saracens are on 6, you know, so they have 3 games left, and if they were to win the remaining 3 games, they'll definitely go through. So
they're going to put out the first team next week, are they, do you think?
So they say, yeah. They'll probably rotate some of the internationals that maybe started this week and bring in, but like the players they can bring back in, the 2 Vunipolos, Farrell, Jamie George Cruz.
All the lads at the coffee shops and
Elliot Daly, yeah.
Building companies and whatever it is.
Investments, the investment crew. But it's going to be very difficult. And I think, look, Munster, the very minute that the whistle went in Thomond Park after the Racing game, I feared the worst for them. And look, they're still thereabouts. Have they a better chance of going to Racing and winning than Saracens next week? Well, who knows? But I think they have to get an away win, because they're on 11 points. And they've 2 away games and a home win. So you think they get the 5 against Ospreys in the last round, which will put them to 16.
Yeah.
If they get a bonus point win.
Against Saracens?
2 losing bonus points will put them on 18. It's not going to be enough, I don't think, because I think Saracens and Racing will get more than that, both of them. So they have to get a win either in Saracens or in Racing. But it was a dogged performance, and to be fair, it's the conditions were horrendous. They had no real chance or opportunity in that second half. They tried to play a little bit, and you contrast that to the Leinster game, the amount of kicks from hand from both sides, the turnovers, the knock-ons.
A function of the weather, a function of the...
It was a function of the weather. Now, both sides probably made a few mistakes as well, which always happens, but Saracens Munster had 14 turnovers conceded and Saracens 16, which is very, very high numbers. And it's just with a dry ball, wet pitch, all that kind of stuff. Even when bad conditions, playing in the 4G pitch, which it will be next week in Allianz Park, it's still easier to play rugby.
Yeah.
You know, you can step and run and you firm on the ground footing and stuff like that. But, you know, they had a lot of possession, Munster. They were probably, they had more territory.
So are you concerned about the style and quality of play, or is it just that this is a really tough group at this stage, and
it's an incredibly tough group, and you can't. It's hard to be critical of Munster and say, well, they should have moved the ball more, they should have done things differently. Both sides just could not play rugby. It was impossible to play with the wind and the rain. So it was just one of those games. The weather conditions. Munster obviously would want to have upped the tempo and really gone for it, particularly in that second half, but they couldn't. They just couldn't do it, and both sides just were able to slow each other's breakdowns down. Munster were forced to kick a lot in the second half through Conor Murray, because it was just too risky trying to move the ball in the conditions. But
what did you make of Murray's performance?
I thought he'd done okay. It was a very, very difficult one again, because there was lots of Saracens and a lot of pressure at the breakdown. It wasn't, I heard some people, he's copped a bit of criticism and flack since he's come back from the World Cup, but there's not a lot Conor Murray could have done on Saturday really to change the game or done anything differently. He had to kick a lot. His kicking game was actually quite good, his box kicks and stuff, so it was very, very difficult for anyone to really stand out. CJ Stander got man of the match, and he'd 17 tackles, 17 carries, and they weren't for a lot of metres because there was no real space or opportunity to make any sort of breaks. But I'd say it was a fair performance, but not a great performance from Conor Murray. You know.
When you look at kind of the standout performers, you just see Peter O'Mahony's comments in the aftermath, like Holland, Jack O'Donoghue, kind of the two names that came to mind for him as like kind of when it needed to be kind of going uncontested the line out on one occasion just to keep the ball and play it as practically as possible. That they've tried to be as expansive more earlier in the season, but kind of that more old school performance is almost needed.
And a lot of their attack was at the front of the line out because Saracens had 2 pods, middle and back, and then even thrown to the tail was very, very risky. They lost a couple of lineouts by doing that, so they kind of reverted to just winning at the front, taking ball off the top. So they were trying to play even in the conditions. They weren't trying to maul or keep it tight, but as I said, it's very difficult from a scrum half in those kind of conditions to find any sort of space. Even when JJ Hanrahan was getting the ball, Saracens kind of were defending from the outside in, which a lot of teams do against Munster.
Yeah.
You've got to find, and that's what they're trying to develop under Stephen Larkin, but they just couldn't play expansive rugby. It wasn't that day.
Okay, so not terminal, but concerning.
Well, yeah, it's going to take a monumental effort to get out of that group at this stage.
Let's move on and talk about Connacht, because they suffered one of those defeats that ultimately probably means they're not going to get out of this group at this stage. It was always going to be a difficult course for them, but they weren't playing well yesterday and managed to put themselves in with a chance of taking something from the game, but it got away from them in the second half.
Yeah, it did. I think they played really well in the first half, and both sides were just making line breaks and finding space and opportunity. Again, dry ball makes a massive difference, and Connacht went in at half-time leading. I really thought they were in the game, and I thought they had a great chance in the second half, but the turning point was the intercept. Connacht attacking on their opposition 22, and Jack Carty gives the pass, Cipriani goes and passes it to Marshall, and they score length of the field try, and 4 minutes later they're scoring again, and Kyle Goodwin is in sin bin as well from more pressure. So probably a 4 or 5 minute spell there. There's a 14-point swing there or more, because Connacht were leading at that stage. So the game just got away from them in the second half, and then, to be fair to them, they never gave up. One aspect was, and it was kind of very prominent throughout the game, there was a lot of turnovers again, the competitive nature of the breakdown from both sides, and Connacht did really well in that facet of play in the first half. They got brilliant turnover penalties when they're under pressure, but they just dropped the ball so much in the second half when they were in attack. And we'll talk about Leinster in a minute, and it's just the difference, Ger, in the top teams, their execution, their ability to make good decisions under pressure, and there's a sense of panic from teams who are below that level, if you like, and Connacht just a little bit of panic yesterday.
Is that coaching?
Well, it's just making decisions in under that bit of pressure, whether to give the pass, take a step, find a little bit of space and contact, and just sometimes not force it. It's hard to describe. You probably have to show some clips from good decision, bad decisions in contact areas. There was a couple from James Lowe on Saturday. He made breaks, brilliant work, and then he just offloads it. It just releases the pressure valve. There's a knock-on. Opposition get a chance to regroup, defend. And there was times yesterday where Connacht were in really good positions and they just weren't accurate enough with the pass, with the lines of running, and to take their opportunities. And then Gloucester just kind of turned the heat up on them for a 10-minute spell, and it's game over. You're chasing it then. When you're chasing games like that away from home, the opposition can just stand off, and it's easier to defend.
Of the 3 out halves who went to the World Cup, it's pointed out in the papers today that the only one who's fit at the moment is Carty, and he's not playing very well.
No, he wasn't. Some of his kicks yesterday were really poor, and you're kicking out of the fence and you're kicking the ball. You know, you've got to put it out, either put it in the stand or find some green grass and get a good chase line up. And a couple of times he just inaccurately kicked it up the middle of the field, and their back three are very, very dangerous, and they're straight back on the attack. And it's the worst possible thing for a forward when you're under a bit of pressure in your own 22 or in your own half, and you're making tackles, you force a big turnover, or you win a line out, you set some play up. And so I just think it's he's jumping the gun a little bit. He's nearly trying too hard. Jack Carty, he's very talented. He got blocked down the first half, trying a little ding kick in his own half. You have to be pragmatic in Europe and make sensible kind of experienced, if you like, decisions to win big games and play cup rugby at times. So he's an incredible talent. So it's just a little bit of confidence and self-belief at the moment, I think.
Well, hopefully he'll come back fairly soon. We've got that game live next week, Connacht against Gloucester. We also have Saracens against Munster next Saturday live and off the ball. So big games coming in terms of the ultimate destination success of the Irish provinces. Was it time to talk about Leinster? They were pretty good. They're very good at the moment.
They were awesome, I think. Look, to be fair to Northampton, you contrast that with some of the, like, to be fair, Connacht Gloucester it was easy on the eye. It was a good game to watch. This was, the first half of this game was brilliant because Northampton were putting a lot of pressure on Leinster, and then one turnover, Larmour makes a break, trial into the field. Stuff. So it's
Larmour's little step was
superb. I just thought,
breaking.
I think 10 or 12 carries and stuff, and for him, and every time he touched the ball, he looked really, really dangerous, and created space and opportunity. But
we definitely didn't need that in our World Cup team. Definitely did not need that in our team in the World Cup. It would have been no use to us.
But he's
got to be a banker for 15 now, does he?
Yeah, I think so. He's again, he probably wasn't tested in the old tried and trusted stuff, but at this stage with the attack, you've got to give him the freedom. It's just that X factor, individual brilliance that can find space and create opportunity for others. In tight games, that can be one try, match-winning stuff. So he was absolutely brilliant. I thought Josh van der Fleer had a sensational performance as well. Just his work rate, the turnovers, the carries, the tackles. Caelan Doris really good.
Talk to us about Caelan Doris, will you? Because he's the one that, of all the young players that they've had coming through in the recent years, he's the one that quietly they'll tell you, this is our next superstar.
Well, and they probably indicate that by putting him straight back into the team when Max Deegan played the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Doris
was 21 still.
Doris was starting a few weeks ago, got a head knock, and then Max Deegan, who's a very good player, played the last few games. And you probably, it's easy from the outside looking in, but they obviously see more and they see the talent and see the ability. And Europe sometimes is an indication of the pecking order. It has to be, probably. Yeah. And he started there, and
especially the away games.
Yeah, he was really, really good. I think his ability to step, he's just really athletic and quick and makes some good decisions with the ball. Always trying to find a little bit of contact, wriggle room, and good skills as well. So he was very, very impressive. Every time they kicked long, a few of the kickoffs, and I just thought, each time there's a defensive line coming up really hard on him, and I know it's a small thing that someone else wouldn't notice, but he just runs up to the contact and he just puts a little bit of footwork on and has an ability to get through a little gap. And
even when you think about what Schmidt was saying in studio with us about the team's ability to offload the lack of O'Driscoll and O'Brien, who had the best footwork in the team, and he said obviously O'Driscoll's was sensational, O'Brien's was good. When they went, there wasn't anybody else left who could do that little bit of footwork that gives you the offload. That's just just changes the defence entirely. As you're saying, it seems quite subtle.
Yeah, but I think the point here for people, if they don't understand, sometimes a little bit of footwork in a very tight channel doesn't get you a line break or doesn't get you the offload, but what it actually makes it more difficult for the opposition to poach the ball. If you run into two guys and you kind of get wrapped up and there's a bit of a dogfight, it's a little bit slower, but footwork gives you a chance to just change the point that impact that the defender is trying to put on you. You take him a little bit to the left or right, and you can get a little bit of leg drive going through, and he has to obviously wrap. He can't put you backwards then.
Yeah.
And anytime I ever played, you talk about winning the gain line. They're the little you're only winning small little margins, but what it does is makes it, the support players coming in can clean out that quickly. The ball is presented really well, and it's that split second of getting the ball back quicker that it's harder for defences to get around. And eventually, when you do that well for a number of phases, gaps appear. The slow kind of stuff allows the defence to set. So it's not magical stuff that he was doing, but I just thought his work rate, his carries and his intent, he looked really, really good.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, and it's only the Champions Cup, but it is still an outstanding performer in the 8 jersey for what can be argued to be the best team in Europe at the moment. So he has come into the thinking for Ireland. Like, is he ahead of Jordy Murphy now automatically in the 8th pecking order behind Conan and Stander? Would you even...
Well, when you play in a standout team and you're one of the standout performers, you have to, and I said this 2 weeks ago in a piece I did in the Indo, that anyone who plays well in these back-to-back games, because it's of course the Interpros will be on over Christmas, but they'll be mixed and matched. These are real tests, these back-to-back games, and I think if you stand out in these games and win with your team, it's close to international stuff as you can get at this stage. So Doris and Leinster very, very dominant. So the vast majority of those guys are on the front foot as regards selection for Ireland. I thought Gibson Park was absolutely brilliant for him as well. You know, his ability to support players when they make line breaks. Every time someone looks in the inside, he seems to be there. He's just a brilliant knack of anticipating. Ross Byrne and Luke McGrath come on, they're brilliant as well. The concern obviously is the injury to Sexton. I don't think it's too bad. I'm sure he'll might sit out a couple of weeks now.
We're 8 weeks away from the Six Nations. It's it automatically becomes a potential doubt for the Six Nations when somebody picks up a...
I think he'll be frustrated because, you know, after the World Cup, like all the players, you want to try and get back playing, and, you know, back winning it with Leinster is they seem to be enjoying themselves again. So hopefully it's not too long, because Johnny Sexton needs games. He needs to keep playing and get that mojo and flow back and lead into the new year.
And the captaincy obviously up for grabs going into that. Like, I mean, from Sexton's own perspective, he'd like to start the Six Nations.
If they go short-term captain, it's Sexton, O'Mahony, one of those guys. If they go long-term, it's James Ryan, and for me, it's James Ryan. I think they should. Now? Yeah, I think so. Unless he doesn't want it himself and wants to just focus on his own performance. I said this as well. Sam Warburton, 22, Richie McCaw, 23. When they were captains and made captain, Brian O'Driscoll was 23. I know Dricko said maybe he was a little bit early for him. It depends what James Ryan thinks himself. And I wouldn't have no major issue if they went short term, but it'd be kind of nice to see a long-term appointment.
All right, good stuff, Quinny. Thanks very much for joining us. Anything else briefly you want to get off?
Ulster, just quickly, 9 points down, second half. Again, a game they probably should have lost. They made mistakes. Dan McFarland admitted to that afterwards, but they're just finding a knack and a way of winning. I know it was down to a bit of poor discipline from their second Kevin Batty, the second row at the end, where he shoots out of the line, makes a tackle on Adam McBurney, but they're finding a way and they're sitting pretty atop of the table. There's a bit to go. Obviously, they've got to go to Quinn's and get something at the weekend.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
All right, pretty good stuff. We'll talk about that again later on in the week. It is 6 minutes past 9, nearly 7 minutes past 9 this morning. Talking boxing next here on OTB AM. Andy Lee is going to join us in the studio, just back from California, having been in Jason Quigley's corner last Thursday night, and his comeback win. Obviously going to talk Joshua Ruiz as well. That's next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
Salah takes a shot. Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season. 25 yards out.
If you throw your lot in and play senior international football with somebody, that should be the end of it.
That's brilliant. Oh my goodness me. You will not see a better try.
Who will be All-Ireland champions? Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
OTB Live. Never miss the action right here. Every Saturday and Sunday on Off the Ball.
From true crime believers to science and business achievers, sports, arts and comedy to the latest entertainment wannabe. Get political, get healthy, get educated. Get all your favourite podcasts on Go Loud. Download the Go Loud app now or add us on your smart speaker. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio and music to your ears.
OTB AM.
All right, you're very welcome back. Andy Lee is here with us to talk us about a big weekend of fighting. Let's start with Joshua Ruiz the weekend. Ruiz is saying afterwards that he wasn't fit. Didn't look particularly fit.
Yeah, I know. And it's the biggest... like, you can take a lot, you can learn a lot from Anthony Joshua on how to handle a defeat. Because
you look at how he handled the first fight, and there probably were reasons for that performance. And there were obvious reasons. The late replacement, the complete change of opponent in terms of the style and the guy to prepare for, and he did not make one excuse.
They're starting to make excuses now. They're saying he was sick. That he had an illness.
But it's fine now that he's come back and avenged it. Yeah. It was an interesting few comments. He made it like to Mike Costello and Steve Bunce that he had been sick, that he had a diagnosis, and that he was always tired.
Yeah.
And felt run down, and he put it down to training. But then after the fight, he went and got seen by a doctor, and now it all makes sense, and he's flying now. So, what kind of symptoms are there? Yeah. What was it? Like he wouldn't actually say what it was, and he actually also said that he had an operation during training camp.
Okay.
Which he didn't say what it was or where.
Yeah, what it was for. Yeah.
Maybe it's a viral infection, or maybe an allergic reaction or to something that...
I'd like to know what the treatment is. You know, if they've discovered something helpful.
Yeah, that's probably...
You know, that's always...
When you're not answering, when you're saying things like that and you're not answering, giving a definite answer of what it was, what you had done, then...
Questions emerge,
But in terms of performance, it was almost punch perfect. And from this first bell, it was apparent what was going to happen, you know. He looked a lot more fluid. He looked, obviously there was a big issue about, a lot being made about the weights compared to the first fight. For this fight, when Joshua had lost a lot of weight and Ruiz had gained a stone. So, and that led into, that should have been the first, that should have been not the warning sign, but the first signify that this was going to go the way it was, that Joshua was going to just box and move in a kind of a Klitschko-like style.
It was a bit Klitschko-esque.
It was very Klitschko, yeah. And I actually messaged Vladimir during the fight, and he said, "Yeah, he's boxing smart." Vladimir said, "Yeah."
Yeah. And like when it comes to boxing smart, would he be at? Would Vladimir say, "Yeah, he's definitely at my level," or he's like,
no. He was kind of laughing. He said, "Yeah, well, safety first, and he gets the win." You know, something like that. It was kind of I don't know, but like I think. Like it was, people who've seen the fight, he was constantly moving. People who haven't seen the fight, he was moving all the time. He was jabbing, keeping Ruiz at a distance, and tying him up in close. It wasn't the exciting fight the first fight.
He got caught a couple of times.
He got caught when they were close, and there were cuffing punches when he didn't effectively tie Ruiz up. You know, for the most part he was tying Ruiz up well, holding both Ruiz's arms. And basically shutting him down. But there were times when he let one hand free and Ruiz would hit him with that hand. But like, I was so disappointed in Ruiz. You know, it was like 30 seconds into with 30 seconds remaining of the last round, he starts banging his chest and saying, "Come on, stand and fight." But it's too late now. It's too late. It's too late. And he's the one who's making excuses now, saying that he hasn't trained, that the fame and the fortune's gotten to him and that he didn't put in enough work. But I don't believe he warrants a rematch or a third fight, because
it was
so one-sided.
Not unless he beats one of the other contenders and
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's no way for. I don't think there's an immediate trilogy. It wasn't an exciting fight to warrant that.
No, nobody's interested in that. I don't think. I would like to see what Ruiz would be like with proper training against one of the other contenders.
He might be a cruiserweight if he trained properly, but yeah, he probably has to go back and start doing something.
But like, there's enough there as a fighter for him.
Oh, he's hugely talented,
and he didn't get taken out. There was no sense that at any stage Joshua was going to step in and finish him off.
No, he tried it a couple of times. Joshua, like, he did take a couple of risks, but then it was, once it didn't work, he went straight back into the safety zone. And you have to give it to him. Like, you can't underestimate the amount of, I don't know, mental fortitude and strength it took to make that adjustment and to reverse the first fight, to reverse the decision, because you're coming up against a guy who's already beaten you. Not just beaten you, but kind of humiliated you in such a public way on the biggest stage in boxing.
Yeah.
You know, and here you're going into his biggest fight of his life and the biggest fight of the year, and against a guy who's already put him down 3 times and stopped him and had him concussed, and he adjusts and stays disciplined and I thought that it was, in that sense, it was an amazing performance, because come back and do it in an immediate rematch. You know, a lot of guys, he would have been forgiven had he took a couple of easier fights and then came back to fight Ruiz. But he went straight back in, and there's a lot to be admired there.
So, what do you want to see next from the heavyweight division?
The way it's looking now, politically, when you have all those belts, you're going to have to fight the mandatory challengers. Kubrat Pulev, who's Bulgarian heavyweight, who's the IBF #1, looks like he'll have to fight him next.
Any good?
He's good. He'll be a completely different style to Ruiz because he's similar height, 6'6".
Right.
A technical boxer, has lost to Klitschko already.
So that's not going to be a hugely exciting
I don't think
contest.
it'll be, no, and I think it could be, like I was thinking about Joshua's style going forward now. What's going to be his style? Is he going to be this, action fighter as he was in his first fights? Before the Ruiz fight, he was really an action fighter, he was a clubbing fighter and got the knockout, 21 knockouts, in 23 wins. So, but when I saw this version of him against Ruiz, he was boxing very smart, and that could be his way forward. But I don't know if he's a good enough boxer to beat the very high level guys, especially when you're matching in height and reach. You can't really stay back like that. And
that's why when the Klitschko comparison, like Klitschko was unbelievably proficient at that, like supremely technical, because he'd boxed all his life. You could see that Anthony Joshua was new to that. Like the bits where he's getting caught, that looked like somebody who's just picked this up.
Yeah.
And fair play to him for doing it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's like that's actually something that actually like makes the performance even better. The fact that he could do it for 12 rounds, the fact that he made the physical changes as well, that he dropped his weight, changed his training camp, went back to just boxing, took the emphasis off strength and conditioning, and boxed a disciplined fight. It makes it even better, I think. But going forward, what's his style going to be and how is he going to fight? Maybe he'll tailor it to each opponent, but we're having that Klitschko-like style. It's important if the fella in front of you is a lot smaller. But when he's going to be fighting Fury, Wilder, even Pulev.
If he goes in to fight Tyson Fury on the basis that I'm going to win this in a technical fight, he's going to lose.
He's going to lose. And even if he tries to do that with Wilder, as we've seen, the best technical boxer maybe of the division, Luis Ortiz the last time, outboxing Wilder for 6 rounds and gets knocked out with 1 punch.
Yeah.
So that could happen as well.
There's a couple of then different things that kind of add to the intrigue as well. First of all, Anthony Joshua's post-fight comments about how he can understand how someone like Andy Ruiz just couldn't handle being a world champion, and all the kind of come-downs that come with that, and it holds you back sometimes and it distracts you and all that sort of thing. Now Joshua has that back again. He has that pressure back, and I wonder if that was an insight into how he perhaps struggled with being kind of considered the greatest in the division.
And I think he's learning as well. He's mentioned some things about just saying no to media requests. Like he famously used to, before every fight, he would do an open workout, a sparring session in Sheffield, and he would stay there for 3 or 4 hours talking to and interviewing with everybody. And that was cut off this time, and maybe it's a good thing for him and a positive change, because those things are draining. They're all things that you have to do, not that you want to do, and you're answering the same questions a million times, and and all you want to do is fight.
Yeah. The other thing then is that he's 30 years old, and the whole idea of actually making these fights happen is going to have to happen in a finite amount of time. I think it's fair to say he's not going to be like Pulev. He's not going to go till he's 38 years old.
I think well, the way it's just shaping up, Pulev fight will be next for him. On the WBO side, which is the belt he also holds, the #1 challenger there is Alexander Usyk, the cruiserweight champion, who's moved up to heavyweight. He's going to fight Del Boy Chisora, and so I think the winner of both fights they'll meet each other. So it'll be Joshua Pulev, Usyk and Chisora.
You think Joshua would do good numbers, and that would probably be kind of a good stepping stone then before
the end of the year fight with one of Fury or Wilder. That's in an ideal world, but we always know boxing has a way of complicating things and messing it up,
Yeah, because he only fought twice in 2019. I'm looking back, and he fought twice in 2018, and only fought twice in 2017.
It's hard because all these fights are pay-per-view. The build-up, the kind of, are people going to want to pay for it 3 times? I don't know. It seems to be an appetite. This fight is I think has broke our UK record for pay-per-view buys, over 1.6 million buys. So
that's insane.
That's insane, yeah. £25 or whatever it was. But I think we paid €30, but it was a lot, you know. So it's good money there.
Lack of a knockout as well. Like,
yeah, I know.
Is that going to be a concern?
That's it. That's the only thing with the style. With Pulev, I think you'll see him a mix of both styles where he will be going for the knockout, and it will be there for him with Pulev. You'd fancy him to knock Pulev out. So.
I want to see him fight Fury, and I want to see him fight.
Well, they're scheduled to fight February 22nd now, Fury and Wilder. Obviously, that's a huge fight. And then the winner fights Anthony Joshua, if not have one more in between. But
yeah, it could be a year before that happens, though.
Yeah, you'd like to see it before the end of 2020.
They should just all be like, look, because everybody gets rich from that fight, and the follow-on against the loser. Like,
and with Joshua having a loss now, and there should be more. They should be more willing to take a chance and go for it.
Yeah.
And he's shown that he can bounce back from a loss.
Yeah, there's no.
So it's not the end of the world.
Protecting records.
Yeah.
From it. Who is the best heavyweight in the world at the minute?
Tyson Fury. Wilder always has a chance with anybody because he can knock them out at any time. But Tyson Fury.
And second?
Wilder.
Right.
Probably. Then
Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua coming back into it.
That's exciting though. That's like, because I do think that he's not proficient enough to protect himself for 12 rounds. So there's going to be moments.
Maybe just over a year ago, it would have been the complete reverse of that.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly it can change in boxing.
Like the bit about the style is interesting, and because he hasn't had that grounding as a 10, 12-year-old, he's going to give you a chance. And that's like why every moment you're like, ooh, one of these points is going to land.
Even at like in this fight, even though it was a dominant display, he was still vulnerable.
Yeah.
At times.
There was a few rounds like, oh, he's got, oh. And he's looking
any
back.
punch that went around the side of the head or the neck, he looked vulnerable.
He did. There were certainly, Ruiz has no qualms about punching you when you're not looking. He was happy.
Yeah.
Referee's like, shut up, get on with it. But I was like,
it's crazy. He's probably Eddie Seth out of a trilogy fight, you know?
Yeah.
Ruiz.
Yeah. And look, that might be no harm. But I would watch Ruiz fight Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
I would definitely, if he...
He's still a huge name. He's former world champion now, but he'll be a good opponent and an interesting fight for anybody.
Yeah. Jason Quigley was impressive.
Yeah. From a coaching point of view, impressive again, coming back after a loss. Like, this is why I put so much stock in that with Anthony Joshua. Even for someone like Jason, who it's a lot less exposure. It's Jason's loss is just as significant to him as Anthony Joshua's loss is to him, but it's on a lower scale in terms of the exposure and the world recognition. But for Jason came back, and I think he'd admit he was nervous for the fight. He fought a guy, Abraham Corrado. We didn't know what to expect because we'd seen him before, and you'd fancy Jason to beat him, but he had 12 weeks to prepare for the fight, Corrado. So we were expecting a better version than he'd ever been.
Yeah.
But Jason went about his business with real purpose. There were moments when he was hesitant and a little bit unsure, and kind of reverted back to some old bad habits. But that's understandable when you're under duress. You know, you're always going to revert back to what you know. But he did okay. He got him out of there, got the knockout, and that's important. And I think another fight of a similar level, pretty soon, early in the new year, would be ideal, just to build confidence and get him back where we can train together, and he can rehearse the things we're doing, and then step it up again.
Does he come through it unscathed? Is he physically okay?
Yeah, no hand injuries, no cuts, no bumps. I don't think he took a clean shot. So, he was just a couple of times he was rushing things and not setting it up, you know, and he's got to take his time to create opportunities and trying to force them.
That must be the hardest thing, though, because like the clip that I saw, and I haven't seen the whole fight yet, but the clip that I see is actually chasing him around the ring. I'm like, yeah, that's great. You want to see it because that's what everybody wants to see, and you're like, no.
No.
Be calm.
I want he can chase him around the ring, but do with some effort behind it, you know, not just be anyone can run after somebody and just trying to club them and hit them, you know. Like, even if you watch the clip, you can see his feet, he's square on his feet, and his chin is in, and his head stays in one place, where we've been working on, where he trades and moves his head at the same time. But he'll get it. It takes time. I know myself from changing trainers and working with somebody else, it takes time to ingrain those instincts.
And how are the politics of boxing in that division at the minute?
Jason's still a good name, and he's only a few fights away. As I said, the champion, number one man is Canelo. Even though he's gone up and down the weights, he's still the recognised number one. You have Golovkin, you have Danny Jacobs, who's due to fight Chavez Jr. soon, and you have Demetrius Andrade, who's a WBO champion. And within 2 or 3 fights, Jason will be in a position to challenge one of those guys. Maybe Andrade is a good route for him, but we'll see.
How do those fights even get made? Like what? So you win. Say you win 2 more fights.
He's got to. Say if he wins another fight of a similar caliber and then step up fight with a better opponent, a ranking opponent, then he'll be in position to fight.
So
but that stage it'll be 20, maybe 20-1, and it'll be. It's down to his promoter to make the fight. You know, to stage it and offer them good money to fight him. But Jason's attractive because if he fights on the East Coast, then he'll sell tickets and they'll want somebody like that to help fill an arena. And obviously with a loss, people will think they can get to him now. But even within Ireland, there's 3 middleweights. One of them fought this weekend, Dennis Hogan, who he could match up with and make good fights. Even though I've never really liked like Emmanuel, and I wouldn't like to see my fighters fighting other Irishmen. You know, I don't think it's good luck. But if those fights are lucrative for Jason, then we'll have to go with it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. He's not too far away. It's still early in our partnership, and he's still got a lot to learn and improve on.
How did you find the whole experience? And how are you finding this whole experience? Because it's relatively new.
Yeah. It's different. Yeah, different.
Are you throwing every punch yourself when you're standing by the ring?
No, I just try. I don't know.
There are definitely people in the corner who you can see.
Yeah.
Like,
you just want them to do so well. Like when you're the boxer, you're in control. So there's no nerves. You know what you've done. You know how you've prepared, and you kind of have a feeling of control about the whole thing. When you're a coach, you just gotta let them go and see what they do. You know, and then you're kind of trusting that what you've done with them. But that's the thing with Jason in this fight. All the things we'd done and all the sparring he'd done, the good things that he'd picked up, he didn't do them in this fight. So I was kind of like, you leave, not that he's letting me down, but he just, I was obviously reviewing it since and analysing it. It was probably always going to be this way, that he would go back to his old habits, but there were clear signs that he fought with a lot of purpose. I don't think he'd ever been this aggressive before in a fight, and it looked good for some parts, yeah.
And how do you know what to say in between? How are you getting better at that as well?
Yeah, I think that's a learning process for me as well. Just being able to communicate. But you just say the things that I've been saying to him every day in the gym, and just hope that they hit home. Not tell him anything. Don't try and teach him anything in the corner.
It's too late at that point. But it's
yeah, I know. But
here, what about we rip it up and do something different?
Turn southpaw. No. But no, it's early doors, but we'll see.
Dennis Hogan, I didn't see the fight. It was a big step up for him. He fought well for 5 or 6 rounds, I think.
He did well to hang in there with a really, really elite fighter in Jamal Charlo, and a world-class athlete. I don't think you'd say that about Dennis, but Dennis is very clever, very crafty boxer, and posed problems, but was a bit of a puzzle for Charlo to work out, and did well in spots, but just came up short really against a much better fighter.
Okay. Was there anything else over the weekend that we needed to?
Not really. Aaron McKenna fought, young Monaghan boxer fought as well, and I think he had a 2nd or 3rd round knockout with a body shot. I was in the dressing room, so I didn't get to see it, but the reports were good, and those 2 brothers are really making waves over there, so.
They're also top rank as well.
They were Golden Boys.
They're Golden Boys.
Jason,
sorry.
Yeah. So,
yeah, exactly. Sorry, and that's obviously probably their 2nd full calendar year living in California over there.
Big mates with your buddy. The big mates with your buddy.
Exactly. It's that's the kind of the one mutual friend we do have. It's been I can remember 2018 was just this unbelievable year for them where their star had clearly risen, and like obviously pictures with Kendrick at the likes, like 2019.
Ken, as you call him.
Exactly, Ken or K. He's kind of he's similarly shortened my name. Like when you look back on
What's
their,
he call you, O?
Just O, yeah, basically. I'm like, it actually starts with E. It's like, what are you doing, Kendrick? But how's their 2019 been? Because obviously it was always going to be tough to follow up.
Yeah, I think it's just now for the next year or two, they're being so young. It's about progression, you know. But one thing that strikes you about them, like they're the same height as me. They're 6'1", and one fights at 140 pounds. The other one fights at light middle. They're huge for their weights, you know, and they're really nice young lads. And they seem to be taking it all in their stride. So, like, I think it's next couple of years just progress as the way they're doing, pick up experience, learn in the gyms over there, and just build up a record now and pick up experience.
Good stuff. Andy, thanks a million for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you enjoy the Joshua fight? That was the other thing. There's a lot of people complaining
Not really.
about it.
I don't think so. But from the first bell, I just knew that's the way. I could see that. Like, why didn't I? And you know, when you always should trust your first fight, and the fact that he was losing weight, the fact that he was having it in Saudi Arabia meant he could fight that type of fight. There wouldn't be an expectation for him to entertain. Yeah, you know, there wouldn't be booing because they were just happy to have it there.
If you did that in America, there would have been like,
they
would
have been booing
in a fight.
Yeah. That's. But I think there's this real split between casual fans and actual boxing people who think. Boxing people will say it was a great performance, and they know what it took to overcome that first loss, where the casual fan just wants to see blood.
Yeah, of course.
I want to see it too sometimes.
Nice tension. Right, that is it from us this morning. A quick update on how the poll is going. I think we can tell you what have we got. We've got Tipperary 2010 are at 55%, and Dean Rock on the GPS is 45%. This is our round of 16, Clash 6, top 16 moments of the 2010s. Andy, somebody left off your world title win. Tommy, I think, or probably Owen left it off.
I was disappointed I didn't make the list now.
You should have made the list.
I'm going to protest. I should have.
You should protest.
It's Owen, yeah. It was Owen's list.
I know I could have made the list. Richie McCormick's the piece were retired. That was one of the best percent.
It was.
Don't worry, that's definitely in our list of interviews.
That was
great radio moments of the
That's
decade.
Definitely that is a legitimate thing that we are doing.
To be fair,
you can redeem yourself there.
The ball getting thrown.
Number one.
The ball getting thrown over the line in the 2010 Leinster final makes the list. So perhaps it isn't actually the most kind of stand-up list that's ever existed.
There may have been some issues with our list from the get-go. That is it from us this morning. If you missed anything, go check out the podcast. Off the Ball is live tonight from 7. We're back tomorrow from 7:30 a.m. We'll see you then. Good luck.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports